Just know that tomorrow you will be silenced by the very things you refuse to speak up about today. Tomorrow you won't have a choice. What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. It never ceases to amaze me how much we complicate our life in an attempt to not complicate our life. We often take routes to avoid stress and problems by creating more disharmony, constantly optimizing for the short term, foregoing responsibility, biting our tongues, keeping the unstable peace. We do this in good faith, thinking we are doing the right thing, hoping time will fix things. But often, hope reveals itself to be an inadequate strategy. And what we leave unsaid, undone, unaddressed, doesn't simply just go away, doesn't just fix itself or become irrelevant with the passage of time. Instead, it grows, and it makes the prospect of repair a lot harder than if you had dealt with it when it was smaller in size. The years you spent suffering in silence, thinking they buy you something, ends up being that the silence itself creates more suffering, a steeper hill to climb out of, a deeper hole to dig out of. Now, this isn't always the case. There are times the best thing to do is nothing at all. They say silence is the language of God. All else is poor translation. But more often than not, there isn't a situation with a size too small that isn't worth addressing. All those little things that you overlook and don't say anything about accumulate to the major structures of your life that your life sits on, supported by. And because those are major structures of your life, inevitably then, it makes things way more complicated and complex than you had intended them to become. All the things you were trying to avoid them becoming. And in many situations in life that require negotiation, even a poor translation and a mere attempt at expressing what was inside of you would have created more simplicity and serenity than silence. Not because each attempt at speaking will be spectacular, not because it will help you achieve your desired goal or necessarily reconcile differences or solve issues, but at the least, it will serve as a forcing function. It will open and close otherwise ambiguous doors that cannot withstand the echoes of speaking up. And I always say, any life seemingly difficult or easier that emerges as an expression of truth is an adventure I'm ready to go on. If the cost of peace and harmony is a distance from the truth, then it is a price too high to pay. I see these sad situations in my own family, and I often give people the benefit of the doubt. Many times, people remain silent because they don't have the skills to speak up. They don't actually know how to use their mouth to utter the truth. They are afraid of doing it wrong and blowing things up. But the ironic part of that statement is that no one is born with this skill. And the only way to hone that skill of speaking up, to not remain silent, is to not remain silent and to speak up. Even if done poorly, there are very few things that can't be repaired if a person is speaking with the intention to connect. If you speak harshly just to satisfy your ego, then as you instantiate the desired space your ego wants to occupy, you decrease the room someone else can cohabit in there with you. Don't even consider those as failed attempts at speaking. They were a failure in intention. Don't blame what was said for the place it was said from. And that part you can control. No skill required. Come from a good place, a place of harmony. And even if your words don't match, the message will be felt. What's at risk, though, if you don't develop this skill, is the sacrifice of everything you are trying to desperately preserve today. You think you're doing the right thing by not saying what needs to be said today. Just know that tomorrow you will be silenced by the very things you refuse to speak up about today. Tomorrow you won't have a choice. What you try to save yourself from today kills you tomorrow. You have the choice today. Tomorrow, the choice is out of your hands. What becomes of your silence, the suffering that it creates, becomes louder than any howl you can muster up at that time. When there is something to be said and you don't say it, it is an act of violence against yourself. And that would be all fine and dandy if you could only affect yourself. But unfortunately, you take the ship down with you. Because if you remove yourself from the situation, there is no situation. What exists without the perceiver perceiving its existence? And so any violence against yourself is a violence against anything you participate in. People that depend on you. Because tomorrow that same violence against you will spill over naturally. Just in the mere participation of your beat up self, with your beat up self, the part of you that suffers begets more suffering in anything that it engages with. Because you muddy the waters. It becomes impossible to tell where you begin and something else ends. It all becomes a substrate of suffering, hard to separate and sift. Your silence then will not protect you, nor will it protect those around you that you love, that you think you are protecting by remaining silent. While you may regret things that you say, you will regret even more for those things left unspoken. For they have a power in your life in way more consequential ways than you'll be able to detect. And if you would just sit with yourself for even an honest 5 minutes, you'd be able to see clearly how many things you trespass against yourself on. And if you really want protection, let your voice be your sword and be your armor. I love you, family. Stay true always. I'll see you on the next show.